Random Thoughts. In this video, I'm going to read part of C.W. Hobley's book, Bantu Belief and Magic, where he makes or he shares knowledge or information that leaves you with the understanding that the Agikuyu Republic had a Supreme Court, sort of. He calls it Court of Appeal. And this is the composition of people who had qualified up to the fourth grade, and this fourth and fifth grade. And these people would perform some specific functions in the Republic, especially as magistrates. And it's important to, I think the word magistrate is a very, an apt word or name for this position. I've seen the translation of the people who served in the ancient Roman Republic in offices that are similar to these. They were also called, or they are translated as magistrates. Today, when we say magistrate, of course, we think of the judge who sits at the courts. Of course, magistrate includes that, but the magistrates of some republics will do more than just decide on cases. It was a mixture of a judge and at the same time an administrator in some cases, and I think this is what it was among the Agikuyu. So there's this part where it tells us that this it's called the Aduriauku, or like the Court of Appeal. I think at that time that is what he considered to be the highest court on the land. It is said that there is no poison without its antidote, and the same applies to the kirume. But now the kirume is a form of curse that somebody will pass before they die. And that was a very powerful curse. And he's talking about how that could be removed. And it was one of those curses that could only be removed by this group, this council. And he says that the antidote must be applied in good time. The only person who can effect a cure are certain persons called Athuriauku. The Athuriauku composed of grade or elders that are of Athuriamburi, which means they've given 4 goats, or they've offered 4 goats to the other elders. Or elders of 4 goats, referring to the fee they pay for initiation to the grade. They are always old men and rich and have to pay their fellow elders of the grade a bullock and a male sheep or goat as initiation fees. So I've talked in another video that while it was generally the case that these people were old, there are exceptions where you find very young people joining this rank. While Aduriamburine form an ordinary kiama, or council of elders, the Aduriauku constitute a native court of appeal. So those who had given up to 4 goats will form the ordinary kiama, which will listen to issues and cases. But then those who now became Aduriauku were like the court of appeal, the final court. And in fact, there's a place where you will say that they used to accept appeals, but not always. They will accept appeals for very serious matters. And I found that to be very interesting. He says, but they do not admit appeals except in very important cases when it is within their competence to revise a judgment, and if they consider it fit, reduce the amount of compensation. It is also the duty of the Athuriauku to instruct the heir in the customs of the tribe when he succeeds to the property after his father's death. So they also provided knowledge to the next generation about the customs of the republic. And the Athuriauku do not treat ordinary cases of Tahu, but have to be called in for cases of Kirume. So cases of Kirume were like one of those special cases that they will handle, only them could handle. In another part, he says, when a man becomes Muthuriauku, he assumes more definite priestly functions and becomes responsible for the proper conduct of the periodical sacrifices at the sacred trees. When such sacrifice is made, the Athuriauku are alone privileged to eat half of the head and the kidneys of the sacrificed ram. He says the elders of Ukuru also decide the date of circumcision feast and other similar questions. So they were the one to decide these matters. It is also the function of the Ukuru of the tribe to settle when the time has arrived for the holding of the great Itwika feasts, which the generation changes from Mwangi to Maina or vice versa. And we've talked about the Itwika in another video. So it was upon them, this Athuriaukuru, to decide on when that happens and how it happens. And then it is during that time, in another part of this book, he says that during that time, it was upon this council to instruct and give knowledge to the next generation of people who are going to become now the new leaders of the society. It was upon them to instruct them on the customs and to give them the secret knowledge of the republic or of the nation or of the people. And in fact, there is also a place where he mentions that it is this council that will take those who are being initiated into the rank of Athuria Ukuru individually. Of course, during the Ichikwa is done as a one function for all. But even when somebody presents the right or meets the right requirements to become a member of that group, they took the responsibility of taking them through then education, teach them about the protocols and the culture and the customs of the republic or of the nation. So in another video, I did talk about, of course, that it was generally older people who were members of this council, but there were cases where you will have a very young man become a member. And Hobley asked why he could see very young men being members of this council, and he was told the elders could recognize a very knowledgeable young man, and when they recognized one, they could maybe make the process a little bit faster for such an individual to become a member of that council. Of course, so that they could benefit from the skills and the talent of such a person, which makes a lot of sense. But then what happens if a member of the Adhuria Ukuru misbehaved? Apparently, they had a solution to that, and he says if an elder behaves improperly while occupying the position of elder or commits a serious breach of the tribal custom, his fellows threaten to curse him with their staves and sacred plants, and he stands in such awe of this that he will appear before the elders and beg forgiveness, bringing with him a ram or male goats as a sign of his good intent. He will then be ceremoniously purified, tahikia. So if a member of the council misbehaved, then there was a recourse for it. And recourse was that the others had the power to cast him out. And that, which I interpret to mean that once they cast him, then he will no longer be part of the council. And often they will come and beg for forgiveness. And if, of course, the rest think this is appropriate, they will forgive them and purify them. And I guess maybe there were situations where they will not forgive him, and then that meant that that was the end of his service as a member of the council. This is very interesting because this shows that this is a society that had a protocol that took care of very critical aspects of governance, and even when things went wrong, there was a way to correct things. Then there's a part where he talks about the initiation to become a member of this Ukuru grade. He says when a Muthuri or elder becomes old, he generally aspires to a higher grade called the Ukuru, but cannot enter it until all his children have been circumcised. Some, however, never become members of the Ukuru grade. The consent of the other members of the grade is necessary, and they do not approve of a candidate who is not well endowed with worldly goods, or again, prospective candidates may be considered unlucky. So the other members played a major role in making the decision of new members joining. And sometimes you could be denied that privilege of serving as a member of the council. And there were several things that will make you not eligible. For example, maybe you don't have children, you've not shown yourself to be a family person, maybe, and then maybe sometimes they consider you to be unlucky for some reason. Maybe there's a tahu that they've recognized in you, and they will be like, no, you cannot become a member of this council. Interestingly, in the other parts of this book, he says that especially for the first grade, the elders did not have a say in it. They will not deny you entry. You just needed to meet the right criteria, and all they needed to do is to facilitate the process. They did not have the power of saying, no, we are not going to accept you. But seems like when it reached to that very high level, then they had the power to say, no, we cannot accept you. Those are some details about the highest organ of the Agikuyu Republic, the Adhamakia Ukuru, how some of the things about how they functioned, how people were admitted to that group. And I found that part to be very interesting. Those are my random thoughts.